Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
What's up, everybody? Pleasant good morning, dissidents. Welcome one and all to a special morning due edition of the Due Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss. We have a terrific show for you this morning. Lots of stuff to talk about. Russell is missing this one. This is his last one that he's missing because he is overseas, of course. But we have a very, very, very special guest joining us this morning. You guys all know who he is, the host of Revolutionary Blackout Network and the next president of the United States of America, Nick Cruse. Nick, why did you decide to run for president?
What's popping, people? I'm not trying to die today, so I ain't running for president. What's popping?
Oh, that's right. It's not you. Oh, I should have booked Cenk. That's right. Fuck. This is awkward. This is awkward.
Cenk Uygur, of all people. You know the guy who only got 6.6% in his election race?
Yeah.
Somehow he's going to galvanize his non-existing constituency to get 20%. Like, who is his constituency, right?
Yeah, he polled less than 10% in basically his hometown. And,
you have liberals who hate him because he has a mild criticism of the Democratic Party.
Right.
Republicans hate him because he's been a longtime Democrat engaged in the culture war. Anti-war leftists like myself, we don't like him because he's a pro-war Democrat. So who are you firing up?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I know. He thinks he can do it all at once. And, we will get to that for sure. But obviously there's some breaking news to deal with that our friend Extra Bulla just alerted me to during the countdown, and then I saw that in the chat. And so let's just start out. Let's waste no time breaking this news. For those who don't know, most of you do by now because news spreads quickly on the interwebs. Dianne Feinstein, senator from California, dies at 90 years old. The California Democrat, the oldest member of the Senate, had been declining in health for months. This broke minutes before we went on, literally just right before we started our countdown. So she has passed away. Now, I've covered this from this angle before, but I want to explain to everybody why this woman was worked literally to death by Democratic leadership. Yeah. Okay. She was obviously not seeking a subsequent term in the Senate. She was due to retire. And there was a Senate primary going on to see who would succeed her. And candidates in that primary included Barbara Lee, Katie Porter, and Adam Schiff. Now, Nancy Pelosi was all in for Adam Schiff. She wanted Adam Schiff to win that primary and become the next senator from the state. The problem with Dianne Feinstein retiring early is that Gavin Newsom promised to appoint a black woman in her place. And so if she retired early, Newsom would likely appoint Barbara Lee because Barbara Lee's running. And so Pelosi didn't want that because if he appoints Barbara Lee, that makes her the incumbent heading into the election, which makes her almost impossible to beat, which basically cancels the primary and basically cancels Adam Schiff's plans to be the next senator. And so Nancy Pelosi insisted that Feinstein was fit to serve and good to go, and she literally worked this woman to death now just to keep Barbara Lee out of the Senate. And whether it worked or not, we don't know because we don't know who the replacement is going to be at this point. But she couldn't make it. It was pretty obvious she wasn't going to be able to make it. But that's the Democrats for you. Literally working a 90-year-old woman in failing health, literally working her to death to keep a, progressive, quote unquote, out of the Senate. That's Democratic leadership for you. Nick, go ahead. Give your reaction.
That's exactly what the Democrats would do. That's why it's ridiculous to believe that you can take over this party from the inside. We've seen this fail multiple times. But I want to speak on Dianne Feinstein. The fact that she can even live to 90 is a crime against humanity. She lived 13 years longer than my grandfather lived. What kind of shit is that?
Yeah, I know.
Do you guys understand, for the liberals who have Putin derangement syndrome, that Dianne Feinstein kill counts is exponentially larger than Putin? Ever since she was elected in the 80s, she's supported militantly every single war. Mm-hmm. And in between her support of wars, she was probably yelling at some kids, some climate activists somewhere in between that as well. She was militantly against the working class, militantly against human rights. And it couldn't happen to a person because this person, and I'm trying to be careful because I'm going to do this. I don't want to get you guys in trouble. Using RB, and I'm like, I'll let it fly, it's whatever. But let me phrase it like this. How would shit-lib Twitter be reacting right now if Vladimir Putin passed away, fam? Can you imagine the massive celebration? Open, they would scratch civil discourse altogether and there'd be open celebration on
Vladimir Putin. Try Bernie Sanders.
Exactly. But the extreme example, it shows that's how my mind works. I don't want to say anything to get your channel in trouble, but there's no justice here because she still lived a long life, a longer life than most of us are going to live. Biden's going to live a much longer life than we ever going to live. Henry Kissinger is still kicking for some godforsaken reason.
Maybe he should be the next senator from California. Put Kissinger in. Yeah. What is he, 101 now? Yeah, just 100. Yeah.
There's no justice, man. No justice.
Well, there you have it. Dianne Feinstein passed away at 90 years old. We figured we would break that news for you. That was minutes old. Extra Bulla messaged me that and said this one's not a fake story either because Extra Bulla messaged us when Jimmy was at the UN, and I thought it was one of his comedy pieces where he edits together footage, kind of like a Turncoat Don type thing. But no, Jimmy was actually at the UN. Did you guys?
I thought that too. Actually, the funny thing is, I thought that was my first reaction. I thought it was one of people like Turncoat Don who added him in at first. And when I first heard the story, I didn't believe it. I'm like, how the hell did they invite Jimmy Dore? Who's getting fired for that decision?
Well, it's funny. He didn't announce it ahead of time because he was on Kit's show yesterday morning and he was saying how he didn't announce it ahead of time because he wasn't sure he wanted to do it because you get a target on your back when you start ruffling feathers at that level. But then he decided, late on into whatever decision-making timeline he had to adhere to in order to be allowed to speak that, somebody has to do it. Somebody has to speak up on the one-year anniversary of Nord Stream, and so why not him? What's that? Go ahead.
Doesn't that show how gangster our ruling class is, Keaton? Because, you can have a YouTube show with millions of subscribers, right? Lashing out against the elite, but as soon as you start talking to the UN, shit gets real. You know what I mean? That's when people are like, oh, y'all don't want to do that. We'll cover this later. Cenk Uygur, who was a clown who running for office, even he kind of talks about it as well. There's a lot of progressives who don't want to run because they're afraid of being destroyed by the machine. What they mean by that? People are attacked all the time, but there's a different level when you escalate against the establishment that people don't want to reach. And the establishment did a great job of openly using violence, and they would have things that are not even close to rationally happening. Like people killing themselves with 2 gunshots in the back of the head.
Right.
Epstein killing himself, and they have stuff like that, and they just flow openly corrupt stuff to just scare people away from challenging the establishment. Even with the joke leading the show, you like, Nick, you run for president. My first instinct, like, Nick, I ain't trying to die. You know what I mean? And that's the reaction that everyone has.
Right.
People who have great platforms, people who have great voices, even like Jimmy Dore, for example, people who asked to run for president, they be like, no, I don't want to do that. Why you guys think people's first reaction is like that? Right? What does that say about the control mechanism placed on us? But sorry, Keaton, you guys know.
No, that's okay. No, and look, beyond a literal target, obviously, I think part of what he's worried about is, stuff that happens to guys like Russell Brand. You know what I mean? Like, they could just come after you. Deplatforming, demonetizing, all that stuff is something that, you have to worry about when you take it to a certain level. But good on him for doing that. I thought his speech was great. I didn't even realize it had been 1 year since the Nord Stream bombing. But it was good that he did that. And
I don't let the NATO left forget it either.
Yeah.
I don't let the NATO left forget about the Nord Stream, because if they had it where they would. But go ahead, Keaton.
No, you're good. Speaking of clowns running for office, there was a debate the other night, which we did not cover here on our show. I know you guys live streamed it.
That was a great decision. And I cover those debates because I like seeing the foreign policy. I told you I'm a foreign policy nerd. Like, even though I know these people full of shit, I like to see what the establishment say about foreign policy, because that show you what the direction of the empire is going to be, right? But I'm like, this is a waste of time, and I think that's the last debate I'm going to cover if Trump not there. Because out of the 2-hour debate, they spent like 5 minutes on Ukraine, probably 10 minutes overall on foreign policy. Whenever they mentioned China, it wasn't like in terms of policy, it was just fear monger. So I don't even count that. But go ahead, Ken, if you want to chime in.
Well, no, that's the thing. They could not stop fear mongering about China. It's like somebody paid. It was like there was a game, like sometimes when these movie stars go to do these interviews, they'll do like 100 interviews a day. And there was this one actor, I forget who she was, where she's like, her publicist gives her a word that she has to inject into every interview just to kind of make it fun for herself, to keep it fresh. It was like someone said, okay, no matter what the question is, shit talk China, no matter what. Because they could not come off it. So I'm going to play a brief summary, because we did not cover it on our channel here. Here's a brief summary of the debate that the Washington Post sort of cut together. Yeah. And watch just how much time is focused on China. The goal of this montage was just to give a summary of the debate. It wasn't like let's see how much they talk about China. Like someone did that when we interviewed Jordan. They said, let's cut together all the times he said Jimmy. That's not this. This was just like an objective debate recap. Look at the time spent on China. This is a few minutes, but it's worth watching.
Behind the walls of his golf. Donald Trump hides behind the walls of his golf clubs and won't show up here to answer questions like all the rest of us are up here to answer. He put $7 trillion on the debt. He should be in this room to answer those questions.
When we have a conversation about the things that are happening on this stage, we think about the fact that Vivek just said we were all good people, and I appreciate that, because last debate he said we were all bought and paid for. And I thought about that for a little while and said, I can't imagine how you can say that knowing that you were just in business with the Chinese Communist Party and the same people that funded Hunter Biden millions of dollars was a partner of yours as well. It's not nonsense.
We opened a subsidiary in China. But you know what I did that was different than every other company? We got the hell out of there. And when I started my next company, Strive,
I'm glad Vivek pulled out of his business deal in 2018 in China. That must have been about the time you decided to start voting in presidential elections. So
Donald Trump failed on this as well. He said he was going to build a wall across the whole border. He built 52 miles of wall and said Mexico would pay for it. Guess what? I think if Mexico knew that he was only going to build 52 miles, they might have paid for the 52 miles.
Vivek, if you let Putin have Ukraine, that's a green light to China to take Taiwan.
Driving
Russia for Russia is a win for China.
Excuse me, if you have a chance.
But I forgot, you like China. Honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what.
All right. It's like if they were cutting together a comedy reel trying to make fun of them for mentioning China so much. It was just unbelievable how often that came up. And, this is obviously a serious thing. This is something that a lot of people mention, that, a lot of Republicans are, I won't even say dovish on Ukraine, but, from a more nationalist standpoint, they are, trying to, block Ukraine funding now. The hawkishness against China is just unbelievable. And it's something definitely to be worried about. This is a Twitter thread here that I think is worth taking a look at. The Army War College thinks war with China could cause 3,600 casualties per day, and so they are considering a draft. This is the report. The Russia-Ukraine war is exposing significant vulnerabilities in the Army's strategic personnel depth and ability to withstand and replace casualties. Army theater and medical planners may anticipate a sustained rate of roughly 3,600 casualties per day, ranging from those killed in action to those wounded in action or suffering disease or other non-battle injuries. So a casualty in this case doesn't necessarily mean a death, but it means 3,600 people taken off the battlefield in some way, shape, or form in a potential clash with China. The thread goes on, 1 decade's worth of casualties in 1 week. This is the other thing that people don't understand about Ukraine. The U.S. lost about 5,000 troops in Iraq over the course of that entire war. The Ukrainians in Bakhmut alone, in just over a year, lost 75,000. So the death count here is just absolutely obscene and tragic in a way that a lot of people don't care to wrap their heads around. And a lot of the sociopaths on both the Republican and the Democratic side will say, hey, look, this is a great deal for us. We're not losing any people. Well, you know who are losing a lot of people? Ukraine, who we supposedly care so much about, right?
You had U.S. government officials even criticize Ukraine for being too casualty averse. So despite Ukraine saying record numbers of deaths, the United States like, why aren't you sending more people to die on behalf of the military-industrial complex? Because that's what it is. You even have military-industrial complex officials admit that Ukraine is a great opportunity for them to test weapons. It's almost like a playground and an opportunity to learn more strategies and test their technology. But go ahead, Kian. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Yeah, feel free to chime in whenever you want, obviously. For context, the U.S. sustained about 50,000 casualties in 2 decades of fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. Once again, casualties in this case, he's not referring to deaths, but in all the ways that he mentioned before, injuries, illnesses, things like that. In large-scale combat operations, the U.S. could experience that same number of casualties in 2 weeks. Others are making similar proposals due to military recruiting shortfall. So here's military.com writing, we should have our military recruiters sign up new troops for 11 months out of the year and then have our selective service draft the delta between military's needs and the total number recruited. In other words, have a volunteer force and then have a draft make up the difference. Hat tip to Malcolm Kayuni, whose compact article brought the Army War College proposal to broader attention. That article's paywalled, so I couldn't access that. But high casualties, not high tech, from unheard.com. If the United States wants to be ready for a large-scale conventional war, for example, a direct intervention to defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion, then the report argues the implication is clear that the 1970s concept of an all-volunteer force has outlived its shelf life and does not align with the current operating environment. More large-scale combat operations, troop requirements may well require a reconceptualization of the 70s and 80s volunteer force and move toward partial conscription. And so there you have that. I thought that was worth reading, especially in context of the Republican debate where they just could not shut up about China, no matter what the question was. What's your policy on the southern border? Well, the Chinese are, running fentanyl through the southern border. What's your policy on education and parents' choice? Well, parents should, have control over what their kids see and hear, and we should ban TikTok because the Chinese are fucking us with TikTok. Like, every question, no matter what it was, seemed to come back to China.
Yeah, and I would not hold it past the establishment from putting the draft back, right? But I don't think they will. This is my guess. My guess is they won't because they learned their mistake from the Vietnam War and the early neocon adventures of the United States. One of the reasons why the United States is successful at waging war is because the American people are not as invested anymore in it. And they learn it's actually a good idea to not have people nervous and sweating over a draft when they have people loved ones sent over to a war. Because once people loved ones are sent to war, once there's a possibility that you can be sent to a war, you may pay attention more. Then people will be like, why are we going to war with China if there's a threat of that? So I won't put it past them. They're evil enough to even float the idea that why it's worth talking about. But I think it would be a giant misstep if they do. I almost want it to happen, because if it happens, general strike is happening real quick. Like, especially this new generation, the people that actually will be drafting, they're not going to engage, and they're not going to willingly go along with U.S. imperialism the same way Americans would in the 60s and 70s. In the 60s and 70s, they were way more obedient. And even then, that caused the ruckus. What do you think that will happen if they start a draft now? I dare you. There'll be way more awareness about the military-industrial complex, way more awareness about war. See, I cover it all the time. But that will be the main thing a lot of Americans will focus on, just like the 60s and 70s, if they institute the draft. So if they do, that'll be a giant mistake. Now, regarding the U.S. war hawkishness over China, I'm glad he brought up the potential casualties, because I want to break something to people who've been brainwashed by American propaganda. We will lose that war, fam. And when I say that, I'm using a very general term, because when I say lose, I mean everyone loses. The global working class would be absolutely devastated. But the American military, especially the Navy, is not great. Like, what war have we won? China's Navy is larger than ours. There's a military cooperation between Russia and China now. So even with the military buildup they're attempting in Japan, they're sending nuclear submarines to Australia and South Korea. That is them panicking, fam. There is no scenario. They got trying to have way more people. They have actually a naval system, a great intelligent defense system, where you have military-industrial complex and military officials run simulations about how a war will go. And it did not go well for the United States. Most importantly, because the United States have not won a war in the modern age. We caused massive destruction and death, which will not win a war against China. Anyway.
Well, certainly we can't. I mean, this is the thing that makes me nervous about a draft, because you're absolutely right about everything you said. And I think you're right that we just don't have the morale. Like, we don't have the faith in our institutions as a country to actually support a sort of like World War II style, all hands on deck effort. However, China is not Afghanistan. China is not Iraq. We're not talking about some banana republic state that we could just knock off with 100,000 troops in a few weeks. You're talking about a major world power. You're talking about arguably the major world power now. You might need a draft in order to have a chance. And even in that case, I don't think we have a chance.
And to that point, you can tell that they want to do this, Keaton, because they're trying to condition people to accept the dream from China.
Well, yes, exactly. That's what you saw in that debate. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I covered this earlier this week. I don't know how much you've been checking this out. I'm a foreign policy nerd, so I've been watching a lot of it. Have you seen literally any China segment from Fox News? Literally any China segment from MSNBC? I've been covering these segments, but I'm gonna ramp it up. Like, I'm gonna start doing like almost at least maybe 1 or 2 every week on RBN, because it's gone bananas. And I've been watching this for years, guys. I've always been watching these segments, these foreign policy segments or whatever. It's escalated to the next level, to the point where Fox News and Morning Joe, they will bring on people, especially people who are Chinese descent, and they will say, yeah, China is preparing to launch a war in the United States. They will say stuff with no evidence. And I covered this earlier this week where they will say this, right? Now, China and their officials, they are preparing for war. They're ramping up the military. You want to know why? Because they see the Fox debate as well. Right. They see Fox News as well. They see all these United States senators and military officials. They say, yeah, I think we're going to be in war with China in 5 years. Yeah, we think we're going to be in war with China in 5 years. Yeah, war with China is a great possibility. So what the fuck do you think China's going to do when they hear that?
Right.
They're probably going to ramp up the military. So then when they ramp up the military, after threats of the United States, after the United States armed Taiwan, after they violate their sovereignty, and then the United States like, oh my God, look, China's ramping up the military. Look how evil they are. They about to prepare. They about to launch war with us.
Right.
You see, guys, the trick they play. But go ahead, Key. I'll pass to you.
No. That's cool. We'll move on. We'll take some super chats here. We have a great crowd in here. 391 in the YouTube chat. 106 over in the Rumble chat. So great to see everybody here. Please hit that like button wherever you are. Hit that subscribe button or the follow button over on Rumble. If you're not following us yet, we need the algorithm's help in the morning because this is not peak YouTube time. So please hit that like button in the morning and get some more people in here. Eric Rousseau, thanks for the $2. Cenk trying to upstage Jimmy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil my joke, but my joke is that I'm glad that people who have Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome finally have a candidate that finally speak to the issues that they care about.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Complaining about Jimmy Dore. They finally got their guy.
Well, repeat that when we do the segment because I want that to be in the YouTube clip. So bear with us, live audience. We're going to have to hear that one again because I like that one. Eric Rousseau, thanks for the $2. Cenk trying to hawk his non-selling book, Marianne Williamson style. Yeah, maybe the advanced book sales are not good. Maybe he decides he needs to spice it up a bit with a run. Abiding, thanks for the 99 cents. I appreciate it. R.I.P. to the dying not-so Feinstein, says Britsman. Thank you. Thank you, Britsman. And I'm sure those well wishes are very, very well received. Martin R., thank you. That's a lovely donation. Appreciate that, my friend. Good morning, dissidents. Good morning to you, my friend, and thank you very much for that kind contribution. Pete Sweet, big shout out to Nick, RBN, and Disillusioned Dissidents shining the light on the end of the duopoly. Well, shout out back to you, Pete Sweet. Thank you very much. Lloyd Trackwell says, we are the real leftist mafia. Yes, thank you very much. I saw the leftist mafia was on last night. I didn't get to watch that. I have to catch up on my leftist mafia. I'm behind on my Vanguard and my leftist mafia. I haven't caught them in a while. I miss them. Yeah.
I can't imagine watching that show. Jesus. I've seen clips on Twitter. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, man. This is the shit lib mafia more than anything else.
Exactly.
One segment I seen this clip where they was talking about why Matt Taibbi is actually a secret right winger. I'm like, yeah, this is real left wing hard hitting.
Oh, yeah. That was way back, right? That was way back.
That's like the last thing I seen from them.
Yeah, that was a while back.
Everything I've seen before, like I tuned out completely. They take Democratic Party culture wars and they argue it in a more edgy way, and they think that's leftism.
Right.
Like we're gonna argue the abortion issue, but we're gonna talk more mean against the Republicans than Democrats do. Look how leftist we are. Like That's what modern progressivism is. They take Democrat talking points and they just spice it up.
Right. Exactly.
There's nothing to the left of the Democratic Party, nothing that will make Democrats uncomfortable, which is why Democrats love watching their shows. But go ahead, Key. And it just we made Olayemi extremely uncomfortable. She had to block us because our politics was becoming extremely inconvenient for her.
Yeah, she was the first account to block us, to my knowledge, anyway. But yeah, we got blocked by her.
And people was warning, and she spoke well on policing issues.
Right.
And we had her on RBN a few times. And every single time we had her on, people were like, Nick, trust me, man, she's a secret shit lib, man. Like, she's fucking fooling you. Then I started paying attention more, and then she got praised by AOC. And then once she got praised by AOC, she flipped out like, oh, yeah, thank AOC. Thank you for acknowledging me, AOC. I'm like, oh, my God. I actually had a shit lib on my show a few times.
You got to be careful.
So I'm still going to be cool with her because I had her on my show. We was friendly, we were cordial, right? And then she just like blocks us out of nowhere. I think she was mad because we roasted her white friends, I guess, at the leftist mafia. So I guess she was ordered to block us, I guess. But anyway,
that against the family.
Yeah, I'm blocked by almost everyone on that show. It's funny. Anyway,
yeah, I'm blocked by the Surfs too, actually. And I never even said anything about the Surfs. I guess they watched us do a roast of the leftist mafia once, and so they blocked all of us. That'd be my guess. I want to talk about the UAW strike, do a little follow-up segment. The UAW union may expand its strike again. This came out last night. So, of course, they have gone with the rolling sort of stand-up strike strategy. The United Auto Workers Union is preparing to announce a possible expansion of its strike on top of the first expansion. So they already expanded it once against GM, Stellantis, and maybe Ford on Friday, meaning today. if there isn't more progress in talks, a union source familiar with plans said Wednesday. So this would actually go into effect right after our show ends, because they would begin striking at noon. They're going to announce a possible expansion of the strike at 10 a.m. today, so that's in 25 minutes at the time of this recording here. The union went on strike against the big three automakers on September 15th, the first time it ever struck all three automakers at the same time. But obviously, as we know, it struck only one assembly plant for each company, and less than 10% of the workforce actually went on strike. So this announcement comes after President Joe Biden became the first sitting president to visit a picket line in support of strikers. So let's take a look at Joe Biden's visit, just a brief excerpt, and then we'll take a look at Trump's visit as well, and then we'll talk about the goings-on here.
Lines when I was a senator since 1973, but I tell you what, first time I've ever done it as a president. Oh, look, one thing is real simple, I'm going to be very brief.
The volume is low, it'll increase.
You guys, the UAW,
There it is.
you saved the automobile industry back in 2008 and before. Made a lot of sacrifices, gave up a lot, and the companies were in trouble. But now they're doing incredibly well. And guess what? You should be doing incredibly well, too. The simple problem. Stick with it, because you deserve the significant raise you need and other benefits. Let's get it!
All right, now, here's Donald Trump visiting a non-union shop in Clinton Township, Michigan. He came right after Joe Biden visited the picket line.
With the auto workers of America. I side with the auto workers of America and with those who want to make America great again, and I always will. And I don't get one thing. I don't get why Ford and GM, why these car makers aren't fighting to make cars that are going to sell, to make cars that are going to be able to go on long distances. They immediately give up. I see it with the oil companies, too. They're promoting windmills, which don't work, by the way, but they don't work. They want windmills all over the place. It's like they're told what to do, and that's what they go against their industry. They're either stupid or they're gutless.
Yeah, he's got a hard-on for windmills, too. He's been really on that recently. Here's Dr. Cornel West. This was in Tappan, New York, but he also did appear in Michigan as well.
I want to say how blessed and honored I am to stand with my brothers and sisters of all colors here at UAW. Because it's all about fighting corporate greed, it's all about defending human dignity, and it's all about affirming solidarity. Because without solidarity, we'll be unable to meet the challenge of those at the top. That we want to make sure we don't divide the workers, we want to make sure the workers are always coming together, laughing together, loving together, struggling together. Sometimes we want to cry together. That's all right, just stay together.
All right, so we've had an email exchange with a guy named Jacob who's been on a couple different shows now, singling out both Do Dissidents and RBN a bit for talking down the strike, as he put it, because we were very skeptical of this stand-up strike strategy. We thought, why not maximize leverage? Why not maximize impact by striking all at once? I got an email from Jacob, and he said, I'd like to come on your show to talk about this with you, to, correct some of. Well, what's that?
I want to be there. That'd be fun.
Well, that's why I think maybe we can convene a panel of sorts, and maybe we could all do this, because I would actually like to talk to Jacob, because in the email he sent us, he said that we were broadcasting factual inaccuracies about the strike. And so I said, yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you, but what factual inaccuracies are you talking about? Because, that's the kind of stuff I take very seriously. Like, we have a very heterodox show. Half our audience disagrees with half the shit we say. So, like, I don't care if you agree or not with me. That's not a big deal. But I would like to know if I'm putting out wrong information, because that's a whole different thing. And so he said, well, you're being factually inaccurate because Sean Fain never said they were all going to strike at once. I'm like, really? I said, you're gonna lawyer it like that? This is why people don't trust union leadership anymore, because of lawyerly shit like that. He said a couple months before, when they called the strike authorization vote, which I understand what that is, it's an authorization vote, he did not lay out specific plans for how the strike was going to go. However, it was very obvious when he announced this stand-up strike strategy less than 48 hours before the strike, the people on his chat were very surprised. And Jacob, another point he makes is that real life doesn't mirror online life. And that's fair enough. But he was on a UAW stream, right? Like, the YouTube audience watching the UAW stream is not our audience, not a knock on our audience, but our audience, your audience. We're an online left audience. We're in this space. If you're watching a union stream, you are most likely a union worker with skin in the game. And on top of that, he admitted when he announced that stand-up thing that this was a new thing that we're doing. We're changing the way we strike. So obviously, it was fair to assume that when he said we're going on strike past September 14th, he meant we were all going on strike. Okay? And I still maintain that the way to put maximum pressure on the automakers is to make them unprofitable. We're saying that this slow drip is keeping them guessing, keeping them on their toes. They don't know which plants are going to go down next. Again, if you shut everything down, no cars get made until the auto workers get a good deal. Period.
And there was a poll, Kean, there was a poll that showed that around 75% of American people supported the auto workers. So what is the argument for giving away that leverage and taking it easy on the unpopular CEOs and bosses of the auto industry? There is none. There's no reason to take your boot off the neck. Now, is there a possibility that their 3-day road strike and get workers some gains? Absolutely.
Exactly, yes.
The argument that I make is that they will get more if they had their boot completely on the neck and did a full strike. The establishment do not want a full strike. So then you will have the leverage, and you have public, you have the majority of the public on your side. You have public goodwill, and then you force the bosses to concede to demands that the public is already on your side for. Now, I understand if you want to do a 3-day rolling strike and you want to test the waters, if the populace is like 50-50, Keaton, because it makes sense. Keaton, like, all right, we got to make sure we uphold public perception. People don't want us, we don't want to be blamed for the economy being destroyed. But that is not the situation we're in. We got right now, even Republicans, Keaton, are forced to give lip service to the auto union because that's how popular they are. When you have this amount of popularity, you use it. Right. So the social democrats and the union bosses right now is handicapping the movement. Even if they get a labor win, it's not as big as the labor win they could have got if they had a more revolutionary approach. And that's why a lot of social democrats, the people who are part of the union psyop, where the union bosses completely overwrite the will of the workers, because unlike the Vanguard and other people, I actually talk to workers. We talk to UAW people. We cover what the UAW workers was actually saying, and they went into full strike. So the union bosses decide we're not going to do a full strike. We're going to do a rolling strike. So whatever the union bosses say, social democrats and people who don't read theory like the Vanguard and others, they take that as gospel, Keaton. Right. Whatever the union bosses say is the position that the left must have.
Right, because they also feel like they need to have a champion. I think a lot of this is wanting to maintain faith in institutions, wanting to maintain faith in leaders. And Shawn Fain was saying all the right things into the run-up of this strike. And I want to reiterate, very importantly, that I still am rooting for Shawn Fain and the UAW to get the best deal that they can. As Nick said, they could very well end up with a good deal based on this. A stand-up strike is still better than no strike. I'm not saying this is not better than nothing. It is, and we're hoping that it works. What we're saying is that the more aggressive approach would have been better. And I want to address this. This is a Rumble rant. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
And I'm Patrick, it's not gonna be long, but the question I want to ask for people who have critiques of my position, like a lot of these fake social democrats on Twitter, is why do you support the union bosses of UAW overriding the will of the workers who wanted to do an all-out strike? So there are people who was all for the all-out strike until the union bosses say, no, we're going to do the rolling strike. And now you got the people like the Vanguard pretend that's a great strategy now.
Well, but what the guys like Jacob are trying to say is that they were never promised an all-out strike. And I'm saying that's bullshit. That's a lawyerly argument.
That doesn't matter because the rank and file wanted to do this. This is the difference between me, a communist, a Marxist-Leninist, and social democrats. Social democrats put elevate the opinions of the union bosses. What I do is I represent and I fight for the opinions of the rank and file. That is what you see Shama Sawant and Worker Strike Back doing. So we support strikes no matter what. I want the 3-day rolling strike to be successful, right? But as a militant class warrior for the working class and for unions, and as someone who know what the most successful strategy is, I think we should have did what the rank and file wanted. So the people who have criticism of our strategy, why do you think the union bosses should be able to override the workers who want to do an all-out strike? I don't agree they should have that opinion. But anyway, and for the people who are surprised, and I see one people like, oh, you talked to work. Yeah, RBN is the only independent media channel that did an actual labor summit. What other channel talked to more labor activists than RBN? Not one. Not one. I posted a challenge and everyone is silent on that. No one has talked to more workers, more union members in the last year than RBN between our 2 labor summits that we had. Period. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to put this Rumble rant up on the screen. This is from Taddy Mason. Thank you for the donation and for the comment. But this is an important point that I want to give my response to. Yep. $825 million strike fund would last 145,000 employees 11 weeks at $500 a week. None of these companies can last that much of a fiscal quarter with nothing being done. Absolutely. They'd have to cave first. Yeah. So,
and that's the argument that the Vanguard was making with the strike funds. Oh, with the strike funds, guys, remember the movement is massively popular. And
but the goal is not to extend the strike. And that's Sean. The goal is never to extend the strike. The goal is not ever for a strike to go on forever. The goal is to maximize the power of the strike so that the strike is as short as possible. The idea is you hit the companies in the gut, knock the wind out of them, and force them to give you what you want. The goal is not to extend the strike. So the idea that, well, we have to extend the lifespan of our strike fund so that we can keep this going on more and more and more, that doesn't make any sense. According to Sean Fain himself, our goal is not to go on strike. That's what he said. So what is this thing? Well, the strike fund, we want it to last not 11 weeks. We want it to last a year. Why do you want to be on strike for a year? If you're on strike for a year, it means your workers are going without a good deal for a year. You want the strike to be short and strong. That's what Shama said when we had her on our show, because I messaged Shama after I did that initial segment, because I said, and Misty said in that first segment that we did, we couched it saying, look, we're not experts on this issue. Okay, we hope that Sean Fain knows something we don't. We hope the union knows something we don't. We hope we're wrong on this. And I said at the time, it's possibility I am wrong on this. You know, we're pretty aggressive guys here on this show. We don't usually say we might be wrong. In that case, I did. And so I messaged Shama after the show off the record. You know, I wasn't going to have her on. And I said, hey, what do you think about this? And then we started talking back and forth. And then she said, I'd like to come on and talk. I said, great, obviously. And then she came on and she basically agreed with our take. So anyway, I just wanted to clear that up because, you know, the idea that us criticizing the strike means we're rooting for it to fail or that we don't want the stand-up strike to happen. That's not true. I would rather the stand-up strike than no strike. Obviously, we're hoping they get the best deal they possibly can. We're just saying, hey, you called the strike authorization vote, which passed 97-3, under the assumption, and that's the thing that has me a little pissed about this, because the idea that, well, we never said we were going to strike all at once, that's bullshit. That's a slippery lawyer argument. Sean Fain himself said when he announced the stand-up strike strategy 2 days before, he said, we're trying a new thing. He sprung it on them at the last minute. There's no getting around that, right? To try and talk around that is, I think, weaselly. But anyway, I do want to, and I will email Jacob back to see if maybe we can come on and have a panel about this and hash it out. I would love that.
And you guys see, I'm more than willing to talk about this because their position is incoherent as far as I'm concerned. Because you say you want to admit you're wrong or not. What they are upset with me, Ken, where few people are. These are people who are always butthurt about me just for whatever reason because I criticize social democrats, right? But they're upset because I am taking the position of the rank and file. So I would like to ask them, what is unreasonable about my position of putting pressure on union leaders and bosses? And that is my reply while I roasted the Vanguard, where you guys take the position that union bosses are above criticism. Right. In our movement, if you want to be successful, there should be nonstop pressure and criticism of union bosses at all time. So what is the counter argument? What is the argument they're actually making me, Ken? Shut up. Don't ever criticize the union leadership in the professional managerial class. That is incoherent. I don't want to take those people on any day. because there's a long history in the United States of the PMC class union leadership selling workers out. I was one of the only people who actually followed the Frito-Lay strike. You know, the Frito-Lay strike, union leadership actually undercut the ask of the workers because they didn't want to strike. There's so many examples of this. So these undisciplined social democrats who don't ever read theory, they immediately take the side of union bosses and leadership. When they do that, they undercut the voices of the workers. I am not here to undercut the voices of the worker. Right or wrong, I will always represent their position of the rank and file, and there's never an argument that say I should not do that. The vanguard, they believe that the professional managerial class, union bosses are above criticism because they are bootlickers of the professional managerial class. I am not. I represent the workers, and I am going to represent the position of the rank and file, period.
Yeah, I think there's a psychology at work here too, which is that a lot of people who, you know, are just sort of left-wing, sort of oriented thinkers, you know, people who don't have as much skin in the game, or people who, you know, don't follow these issues as closely as others, especially, you know, the remnants of the Bernie movements have been very disappointed by leaders over and over again. And I think when they see a leader that they invest in, they really sort of attach to them, you know, because they're desperate to admire someone, basically. You know, they're desperate to think, okay, this person is someone who we can follow. This person is someone who we can trust. And I think a lot of them saw that in Shawn Fain. And when we started asking questions, they're like, wait a minute, why are you ruining this for us now? Like, why do you have to piss on this now? Because, you know, why are you tearing him down? And I said, my intention was not to tear him down. I hope they succeed. Like, I'm rooting for Shawn Fain. I'm rooting for UAW, obviously. But when you see something that just doesn't make sense, and something that, as Nick said, goes against what the workers' expectations were and what they clearly were, you have to call that out, and you have to question that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. The hysterical response that, oh, and, you know, some people said, I mean, this is the most laughable thing. They said they're rooting for it to fail so they can complain because complaining helps their YouTube channels. I'm like, listen. Auto worker strikes do not help YouTube channels. Like, if our first priority was to grow our YouTube channels, we would not be covering the UAW strike at all. We get far more clicks, views, and ad dollars by, you know, taking the piss out of the vanguard. Like, that's what helps YouTube channels. Like, labor strikes are not money in the bank for grifting YouTubers. Like, that's just absurd. The idea that we would take a position because it helps our channel. Yeah, I want the strike to fail so I can make $11 on my clipped segment as opposed to $4 that I would make if I were supporting the strike because I'm less angry. Like, it's just insane.
Yeah, you see how they use civility politics to mute the voices of the workers and dissonance of the professional managerial class. Come on, man, we doing this fun action over here. Don't ruin our vibes.
But that's what it is. Yes, that's exactly it. Yep, go ahead.
The fact that we even had to add the caveat that, of course, we want to see the UAW strike succeed no matter what is bullshit. That is obvious. Why the fuck do we even have to say that?
Right.
The fact that we are have criticizing what we believe is the best action for the workers, whether we are right or wrong, show that we want the best for them in the first place. The idea that if you don't get along to go along, that you're some sort of wrecker, how has this mindset benefit the workers thus far? I am a very scientifically minded person. If this strategy of civility politics for people to shut up when the professional managerial class make a mistake, if that actually got us wins, Keaton, if the strength of the American working class was strong because of the union bosses and PMC left, then maybe I would trust them more.
Right, exactly.
They want us to trust them blindly when they have not delivered results. And that's not the mindset of RBN, and that's why we make so many people uncomfortable. That's why so many people who follow these PMC leaders and social democrats, we ruin their brunch. We ruin their vibe when we tell them they're not as great as you think they are. And they're the reason why the left is not as strong as they should be in the United States. There's a reason why the left in the United States is considered a joke compared to the left in the global south, compared to communists in Eastern Asia. It's a joke. And even in Russia, the quote-unquote authoritarian capitalist state, they got paid maternity leave. Their worker rights is way stronger than ours because American left working class discipline has been a joke for decades because they do stupid stuff like rolling strikes, and they try to be friendly with Democrats and politicians, invite them to their events, allow them to do campaign events at their actions, right? There's so many things the United States left gets wrong, and we look and what RBN, what we do, and what people actually read theory is we look at what actual successful revolutions have done, what actually successful movements has done, and the United States left moved completely counter to what actual communists and actual global South socialists who actually got gains for the working class has done. Social Democrats, as we know, is literally a CI formation in order to make a suitable left for the establishment. And union bosses and then unions were taken over by the capitalist class in the 80s and 90s to weaken them. So we know the capitalist class infiltrated unions, which anyone would know if you actually study history of left-wing movements. What that means, working class people at all times should be critical of these people, because a lot of these people who make $150,000 a year, $200,000 a year, they do not have our best interests in mind. A lot of people don't even know that. And they don't even know that a lot of union bosses, they're not even in our class. They make $200,000.
Oh, yeah, no, of course.
So go ahead, Ken.
No, that's what Shama talks about all the time, business unionism. Absolutely. Taddy Mason on Rumble, thanks for the Rumble rant. If Dude Dissidents wanted to grift, they'd have a Woke Hollywood is dying and ruining everything channel and be making thousands of dollars a stream in super chats from people telling them they agree. You know, it's funny. Russell actually pitches that to me every day, and I keep having to tell him, no, we got to stay on message. Got to stay on topic. Just kidding, of course. Juliet Serpentine, thanks for the €2. Appreciate that. Eric Cousseau, thanks for the $2. Sanctuary War Enlistment coming soon. Rod Ngu, thank you very much for the €5. Yeah, we have a lot of European viewers who are able to watch these morning streams. That's one of the reasons why we do them. I'm glad to see Brother Nick with you today. Well, that's a nice compliment for Nick Cruse. The U.S. government has no consideration for any human life which is not a Westerner. Yes, I believe that there's a lot to that as well. Absolutely. All right, let's do one more, and then we'll get back to the program. Cranky Hand, thanks for the €10. Yeah, a lot of Euro viewers in here today. Stand-up strike is the tactics of German unions for 2 decades. Nothing but losses since. Interesting. I'll have to look into that. Declining wages all over the place, dropping memberships, etc. Did you know about that, Nick? I didn't.
That doesn't surprise me. I didn't know. I couldn't quote this specific instance, but I'm glad for the heads up, because I'm definitely going to look into this so I can reference that on top of my head. Thank you. And this proves exactly my point, right? That proves exactly my point. And I mentioned before, like, because the UAW is so popular, the rolling strike could still possibly work. My argument will always be, even if they get gains, will be they would have got more if they did a full shutdown, because they would have way more leverage. They would have been forced at the table. They could have got way more, period. Anyway, I'll pass back to you, Ken.
No, let's do our marquee segment of the morning. It's Christmas morning because Cenk Uygur is running for president. Apparently, maybe gearing up to run. He went on Breaking Points yesterday to try and hawk his book, Justice is Coming. And I think there might be a lot of credibility to the theory that sales are slow out of the gate, and so he feels a need to attach it to a campaign of sorts. But here's Cenk Uygur explaining to Crystal and Sagar that Joe Biden can't win and that the Democrats need somebody else. And if it has to be him, then maybe he'll do it. This is slightly sped up, so we're not watching this all morning. This is about 4 minutes, but here we go.
Unsolvable. Crystal, we are definitely in an unsolvable riddle.
Yeah.
Because the corporate Democrats say, I will not disobey. I will always bow my head. Right. And the progressives say, well, I can't run. The mainstream media will destroy me. They'll destroy my life. They'll destroy my career, et cetera, right? So how do we get past that? That's why I'm desperate enough to think maybe I should do it. And I'll tell you why. Because let's say that somebody like me gets in the race.
Yeah.
The Democratic voters are dying for an alternative. They keep saying in every poll, for God's sake, give us someone else. Give us someone else. If someone like me were to get to 20 points, do you have any idea how quick Newsom and Whitmer would enter the race?
So are you serious? Are you seriously considering?
I like how Sagar goes, And I mean, I don't know. I'd have to spend time with Sagar in person to know if that like very tight clenching of the lips is to stop himself from laughing. Because when Cenk says, if I get to 20 points, that would change the game. Here, let's watch Sagar's reaction.
If someone like me were to get to 20 points, do you have any idea how quick Newsom and Whitmer would enter the race?
So are you seriously considering?
I mean, I got to give props. I have to give it up I have to give it up to them for not laughing when he said that. It would have been impossible for me to contain a laugh. That's why they're the pros, man. That's why they're making the big money, because they can sit across from this fucking doofus where when he says, hey, if I get in and I get to 20 points, that'll change the game. How do you not burst out laughing at that? In what fucking world are you going to get to 20 points in a Democratic primary? You got, as Nick said way at the top of the show, he peaked at 6 points in his home district when he ran for Congress. He peaked at 6. So what, you think you're gonna get to 20 points? How? In what world? In what world? I mean, what planet are you on? What a joke, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, but I'll say for the segment, Cenk Uygur has no constituency. Like the people who are liberal Democrats, they don't like him because he has mild criticism of the Democratic Party. Republicans don't like him because he's been a culture warrior and a loyal Democrat for the last decade or two. And then obviously anti-war leftists like myself, we don't like him because he's a pro-war Democrat who supported the Ukraine war, smeared Julian Assange, supported the Syrian war. And even the social democrat progressive Bernie type people don't even like him no more because he jumped the shark when he smeared homeless people with anti-conspiracy and supported the police state.
Right.
So he had no constituency, absolutely no constituency. Go ahead.
No, I mean, the idea that he's going to all of a sudden get to 20 points is amazing, but he goes on, he fleshes this out.
I'm considering it, and I'll tell you why.
It's going to happen. RFK Jr. is at 20%. Marianne's at like 10%, something like that.
No, but RFK Jr., first of all, he's not at 20 anymore. He peaked at 20 for a brief moment until Democrats found out he's not a Democrat. Okay. Then he went. Then he dove down. And Marianne got butchered by mainstream media. They made up things about crystals, etc.
And they went to you.
I love Marianne.
Yeah. Well, first of all, they didn't make shit up about Marianne. They just mostly ignored Marianne. And what do you mean they made stuff up about crystals? What? She's not a new age spiritual guru? I mean, what did they lie about Marianne Williamson? No, Marianne Williamson had no chance because there's no oxygen for a challenger that does not have the blessing of the Democratic establishment. If Joe Biden can't run, the Democrats will prop someone up like a Gavin Newsom or a Gretchen Whitmer. It'll almost certainly be Newsom if it comes to that, and they will have a chance. There is no oxygen for a grassroots primary challenger. That is what these people do not understand. And maybe they're not understanding it on purpose. Maybe he does understand, and this is all just a gimmick to get his book sale numbers up, because after 3 years of trying to sell it, he's finally releasing it, and the numbers aren't good. Who the hell knows? But the idea that any grassroots candidate, much less this schmuck, has a chance at breaking through is just nonsense. It's nonsense. There's no money, there's no organizing, and there's no opportunity to build that in a top-down organization, within a top-down organization like the Democratic Party. It's just not going to happen.
I'm interested what your take is too. I give Cenk Uygur maybe 2 to 3% of the vote, the Democratic Party vote if he does run, because he's the voice that the Jimmy Dore derangement left has been waiting for to speak about the true issues, like complaining about Jimmy Dore. So I think he's going to get that 2%, 3% Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome vote.
Yeah. I mean, he owns that issue. There's no doubt about that. Nobody can top him on that. So you're right. He will dominate that demographic for sure.
If she could somehow break through media, great, wonderful, etc. But it's taken a while and she hasn't broken through yet. So we need someone to be super aggressive. And if let me ask you this way. If you get, again, anyone, it doesn't have to be progressive, gets to 20 or 25, an outsider, right? Yeah. This whole town panics and Newsom and Whitmer go in immediately.
I do think
is
there's
that
a possibility.
right?
I don't know, because it already happened.
Crystal, what did you say?
They went after
Crystal. Did you hear what Crystal just said?
I didn't hear. I was focusing on Sagar. Hold on. Let me see what she's got to say.
She said, I think that's a true possibility. Her brain is completely fried. What? Go back and listen to that part again.
Okay.
Gets to 20 or 25, an outsider, right? This whole town panics and Newsom and Whitmer go in immediately.
I do think
is
there's
that
a possibility.
Right?
I don't know, because it already happened with RFK, and they just.
Yeah. There's a
I
possibility.
do think there's a possibility. What?
Well, he said, so his strategy here, what he just said is if a progressive gets to 20 to 25%, the Democratic establishment will panic and Newsom will jump in. So his motive here is not to win the nomination. It seems like his motive here is to cause disruption into scaring the establishment to replace Biden with Newsom. That's what he's basically outlining there. And that's absurd because first of all, he does the same thing that a lot of people in this space, in his sort of section of this indie media space, do. He makes the same miscalculation that only a progressive can scare the establishment. Whereas what Sagar is about to say here is, look, RFK got that far and it didn't scare them. RFK is a bigger threat to the establishment than Bernie Sanders. There's no doubt about that, right? Because Bernie Sanders proved to be a pushover in the end, right? And RFK is now chirping about running independent. So the idea that only a progressive can threaten the Democratic establishment and frighten them is nonsense. RFK gave them a little scare. They dealt with it. They wrote it out. They'll do the same thing if this putz gets to 20%. Nothing is going to stop them except the realization that Biden is unviable, at which point they will switch to Newsom. All of this other shit is just a giant clout chase. That's all it is. That's all it is. The idea that the progressive movement is going to influence the Democrats into making any decision at all is just wish casting nonsense. And I think Sagar pours cold water on that right now, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a look.
Ignored him and they went after him. And
That was
down.
There we go.
No, because it already happened with RFK, and they just ignored him and they went after him. And
that was before when they were convinced that Biden was going to win, and RFK everybody knew was a flash in the pan because he's not really a Democrat.
Maybe.
What the fuck does that mean? Not really a Democrat. What does that mean? What difference does that make?
Now, Nancy Pelosi Democrats, what he calls a corporate Democrat, they don't view Cenk Uygur as a real Democrat.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So
exactly. Well, yeah.
that logic applies to you.
Right. Right. They'll say you're not a real Democrat too. Exactly. Exactly. But this idea that, well, the RFK example doesn't count, even though the RFK example just like completely refutes my entire premise. I'm going to say that doesn't count because he's not a real Democrat. Right. I mean, just nonsense.
Yeah. Sagar just destroys him immediately while Crystal was nodding along like, hey, actually, you got a point.
Yeah. Exactly.
Tell me more about your thinking.
Yeah.
Timeline. What are you weighing? How serious are you?
Give
us the details.
So I already thought about it before, and I rejected it because I know what they're going to do. You're an outsider, radical. They're going to dredge up things from 1987, and when you were in junior high school.
They already did that to you.
I think they did that to you.
Yeah,
that's right.
Of course.
They're going to talk about how I was complaining that women wouldn't fuck me when I lived in Miami. I don't feel like having an answer for that again. That's going to be a headache. But hey, maybe I'll do it. Fuck it.
Honest, the number one problem is mainstream media.
Sure.
Mainstream media is the shock troops of corporate politicians, both corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans.
Yeah.
Their job is to eviscerate any outsider. So that's why do you think progressives aren't running? I've talked to at least half a dozen progressives and tried to convince them to go in the race. And they're like, I don't want my life ruined. Who's going to ruin their life? Joe Biden? He's in a bunker somewhere. No. It's going to be ABC and NBC and CBS and CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post. They're going to go to any outsider and shred him to pieces.
They understand that there's no point in running an unwinnable race. First of all, I would just like to call your bluff there and ask, who are these half a dozen progressives who you tried to get to run? Because I doubt the honesty of that claim, number one. Number two, to the extent that they said it's not worth the trouble, they're correct because it's a rigged game. They have no chance at winning, and it's all risk, no reward. Like, they're just creating this completely false construct where anybody who doesn't challenge Biden for the Democratic nomination is being a pussy. It's like, no, actually, choosing not to fight an unwinnable fight that has proven over and over again to be a complete waste of time does not make you a pussy. It makes you just like a normal, rational person. Yeah. And this guy, for whatever reason, is now chirping about his own attempt to, quote unquote, disrupt. Anything to add before we play more?
We can continue.
Okay.
Sure.
And I'm now so desperate for making sure that we win that I think I'm already destroyed, right? Like they've already attacked me 10,000 times, right? So come at me, bro. So Crystal, it's crazy for me to consider it, right?
Yeah.
But that's the times we're in. If literally no one else will do it. It's insane. So I don't want to go quietly into that good night. And
hey, Cenk, let me say this. If it stops you from doing it, I'll do it. How about that? What if I do it? Should I do it? Let me know in the chat. Just to stop Cenk from doing it, right? He's complaining no one else wants to do it. What if I step in? That's why maybe Nick, how old are you? Or maybe you don't want to answer that, but are you old enough to be president yet?
Nope. 31.
Oh, all right.
32?
So maybe CJ
Shit,
will be
I'm
my
losing
running
count.
mate then. I need somebody old enough to be my running mate. All right. Well, poured cold water on that. But all right.
Right now, we are.
You could be Secretary of State. You'd be a good Secretary of State. I'll keep a cabinet spot open for you.
Yeah.
If I decide to
I
challenge
think I'll wreck at press secretary too because I'll just have fun trolling these motherfuckers.
That's
Anyway, go ahead.
actually true. Yeah, you would make a good press secretary. It's interesting. All right, I'll have to put my thinking cap on.
100% on a track to go quietly into that good night.
So what's the timeline, as Crystal said?
So
When are you going to decide?
No, if I'm going to do it, if
Now
anybody's
they're
gonna do it,
interested. Like now, if you look at like Saga and Crystal's body language, they're all like leaning in now because now they know they have a scoop. They're like, wait a minute, is this fucking guy actually? Is he actually serious? Because he sprung this on them. He wasn't planning on. I don't think they knew going into the interview that he was going to do
They
this.
are in shock. Yeah, absolutely.
Especially Saga with the biting the lip as soon as he said, "Hey, I can get to 20%." Indeed.
So
when are you going to decide?
No, if I'm going to do it, if anybody's going to do it, they got to go now.
Yeah.
Well, announce it.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you?
Announce it.
Yeah.
Have you thought about staff? Have you thought about a plan? Have you reached? I mean, we know you know donor networks, all those sorts of things. Have you started taking real steps?
So if you're going to run a campaign this late, you can't go traditional, right? You can't be like, oh, I'm going to collect endorsements from politicians. Oh, and I'm going to build up my base tiny bit. No, you got to go and hope for a grassroots tsunami. The good news is when I ran for Congress, I mean, it was a tiny little race. We raised like 1.3 million in 3 months. I mean, if anybody can raise money, it's me from the grassroots, right? And I'm a successful businessman.
What? As Nick said earlier, your campaign for Congress was a colossal, embarrassing failure. I mean, an absolute total failure. You got less than 10%. What did you say, Nick? You got 6.6?
Yeah, 6.6. So his like you can tell with the debate with Brown Joy Gray and literally almost any appearance that Cenk Uygur makes, this guy has lost his mind. Like this, like even if you thought poorly of Cenk before, like I've never been a Cenk fan, but public opinion on this guy had never been so low between his recent performances. This guy sounds like a maniac, and his brain is so far gone. He is so delusional. He conjured up a fantasy where somehow he's gonna do what RFK Jr. couldn't do. Like he's gonna do what Bernie struggled to do. He's gonna do something that Marianne Williamson gonna do. This deeply unpopular, deeply unliked person with no constituency is somehow gonna mobilize a grassroots campaign. And people ask me to run all the time, Keaton. Like, and I'm like, and whenever I get that question, I'm like, hell no, because I couldn't possibly imagine having the ego to think that I'm the guy that can change shit. And people always get upset when I'm like, I don't know why you guys think I'm gonna be the fucking guy that can change shit. I don't think I can, right? That's what a normal person would say. Meanwhile, Cenk is like, I choose myself. I volunteer myself. I am the one guy that can do this. Unbelievable. Anyway, go ahead, Keaton.
No, it's okay. We can let it play.
Say so myself. I have some credibility in running things, managing things, etc. So have I reached out to staff? I have. Okay. Now the problem is everybody thinks, well, how the hell are we going to beat these guys, right? So if I go in, it's going to be threadbare staff, threadbare website, and we're going to see, is there momentum? Because if there isn't momentum and people go, no, Biden, even if he's in the 20s, I don't care. I don't mind losing. I don't mind losing. You're being impolite, which is totally possible, right? So if that's
I think there's a decent contingent though.
Yeah,
I think that.
Yeah, and if that's the case,
like Democratic voters think that. First of all, the idea that you're going to get into the 20s is just absolutely ludicrous. It's absolute fantasy land. But suppose you did. Yeah, what Sagar said is, actually, they will just say you're being impolite and out of line. These are Democratic voters we're talking about. This is why it's so important. This is another thing that Cenk sort of reveals here. It's something that I've made the point since the implosion of the Bernie 2020 campaign, when he went from being front runner to loser in just a few days of bad media coverage in the run-up to Super Tuesday. I said a lot of progressives, Cenk is guilty of this here. I think Brianna Joy Gray is guilty of this to a certain extent, although not to as large an extent, at least not anymore, I don't think. Kyle, Crystal, they all assume that the voters are actually on their side and that they only have to muster up the courage to go in and vote progressive. That's not true. The Democratic primary voter base are brainless shitlibs who will do whatever MSNBC tells them to do, no matter what. So if Cenk gets to 20%, which again, we're now in an alternate universe now. Like, this is no longer a serious conversation because we're drifting off into a parallel reality where Cenk Uygur gets to 20%. He gets to 20%. MSNBC says he's dividing the party. He's not a real Democrat. Joe Biden is the incumbent. We have to stick with him. And the Democratic voters will obey because that is what they do. If anyone is going to replace Joe Biden on the ticket, it will be after Joe Biden drops out and the DNC picks who that replacement will be. Most likely that will be Newsom at this point. That is the only chance that Joe Biden will not be on the ticket next year. And I actually think it's a fairly good chance. I think they are trying to angle for excuses to get Biden off the ticket. But Biden off the ticket doesn't mean an open primary where everybody has a fair shot and there's an opportunity for a progressive insurgent to come in and make a splash. No, Biden off the ticket means the DNC chooses his replacement. And it will be almost certainly Newsom. If not him, probably Whitmer. But Newsom seems to be the guy. And that's it. End of story. So this is just an absolute clown show that this guy put on there.
Yeah, that's such a great point regarding Blue MAGA, and the
Right.
reason why a lot of these people have this delusional belief that the Democrats will turn if they're just nice and they have a good message is low-key Democrat apologia, because we understand that Blue MAGA is as big as a cult as the Republican Party. These people believe that Republicans are in a unique cult.
Right.
The DNC code is so strong that Medicare for All activists voted for a guy who said that he's going to veto Medicare for All.
Right. Right. Exactly.
The DNC code is so strong. Sunrise and climate activists voted for a guy like Joe Biden, who literally was bragging about he's going to expand public drilling on the campaign trail. On the campaign trail, they were saying we're going to expand fracking, and they were still apologizing for him. And then they bombed the Nord Stream pipeline, drilled more than Donald Trump, and they still propping them up. That's how big the code is. You guys think you guys gonna win an average Blue MAGA code is over? You're not. There's 50% of the country who do not vote, and these are the people that you went over if you want to build any sort of movement, and that is not what Cenk Uygur is gonna build. Because most importantly in this story, and I mentioned this earlier, the reason why Cenk Uygur is not gonna get any traction because no one likes him, especially on the far left, because he is pro-war. Why do we need another pro-war candidate here?
Right.
Cenk Uygur has zero criticisms of the Democratic Party policy in Ukraine, just like Marianne Williamson. Why are you running to be commander-in-chief if you support Democratic Party foreign policy? You had Cenk Uygur, who famously smeared Julian Assange. You had Cenk Uygur, who famously took the Democratic Party in neocon side regarding Syria. So why are you even running? If your focus is on domestic issues, and if you're actually serious, why not run for Congress? You can make a stink there, right? They're not serious, though. But anyway, go ahead, Keaton.
Well, it's funny. When Cenk actually ran for Congress, he did so in his home district in Southern California. He ran in Orange County, and it was just so, I mean, that just shows a lack of political judgment too, because that's been historically a Republican area of LA. That's where all the snooty, rich sort of LA GOPers lived. And then because a lot of those voters were triggered by Trump's mean tweets, they voted Democrat. They are the new shit lib there. They are the affluent, suburban, moderate who votes Democrat now because they don't like Trump. And that's where he thought he was going to run up the score. I remember it was laughable. He goes on TYT and says, I'm going to tell these voters in this district, I'm going to fight for them. I'm going to fight for them. These are fucking rich people. What do you mean you're going to fight for them? Who? They don't need a congressman to fight for them. Fight for them means keeping their property taxes down. That's what fighting for them means. So that was so ill-fated and just showed a lack of political understanding. And now to think that on a nationwide level, think of what it means to poll at 20% in a nationwide Democratic primary. That means 1 in 5 Democrats in America, when asked who they're voting for, think Cenk Uygur. Okay, so, I mean, just how absurd is that? How fucking absurd is that? TYT is big on YouTube. At least they used to be. They have a lot of phantom subscribers now. But big on YouTube means what? 5 million subs? That's 5 million people. Assuming all of those people live in the States, which they don't, that's 5 million Americans. That's not getting you anywhere near 20%. Like, what are you even talking about if I get to 20%? 20% is a huge number in a nationwide primary.
And that would never happen because TYT never put in the work, right?
Right.
Like people ask me to run. Rome would never run in a million years. He's straight up anti-electoral politics. But Rome, if he ran, if he did run in the alternate universe, would put up one hell of a fucking campaign. You want to know why? Because he did work in his local community.
Right.
RBN, we are the only independent media channel that actually put in work. We actually have chapters in multiple cities across the country. In 6 cities across the country, we have RBN chapters. I had an event where I was giving out school supplies where I recruited around 5 to 6 volunteers, literally in one mutual aid event. Already growing the Kansas City Mutual Aid organization. Already got people volunteering, emailing to join our next event. The next mutual aid event we're going to do in Kansas City, we'll be giving away coats come in the incoming winter. That could be very expensive. I know as a poor child growing up, I had like one coat. We had a funky rotation. So I'm going to announce that maybe in the next month or so. We got multiple fundraisers going on right now. So
excellent.
I'm going to wait till we get a little bit colder. But the thing is, RBN, despite having 30, 40,000 subscribers, there's no doubt in my mind that I would do better than 6%. There's no doubt in my mind that CJ would do better than 6%, that Savvy would do better than 6% in Boston, because we actually engage in our community. I organized in our community. I was at the George Floyd protest. I gave a speech at the March for Medicare for All. I gave a speech at the Worker Strike Back event. I co-founded 10 Demands. I am literally helping feeding my community. So despite the fact that Cenk Uygur had 5 million subs, he couldn't get 6%. You know why? The motherfucker's not in his community. And that's the entirety of the independent left media space. RBN is the only channel that actually starting chapters, engaging in mutual aid, and inspiring other people to do that. Before RBN started, who would talk about mutual aid? Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No,
as
you're
we
right.
Run, and I'll wrap it up, but as we run, we're not running in the conventional campaign that Cenk would run. We will run as a way to build a movement, build a mutual aid society, and build a campaign that way. That's why we will be guaranteed to get more than 6%. That's embarrassing, fam. You got 5 million subscribers and you're nationally known. You get 6%
in your home district.
Because you guys don't do anything. You don't organize. Anyway, go ahead, Kian.
No, that's right. You guys are Orlando, Boston, Kansas City.
I'm sorry. I told you guys I'm gonna start bragging more. I'm gonna be insufferable because people just straight up lie about our business. I'm gonna brag more. That's the new modus operandi.
You have to. I mean, then they'll tell you that you're building yourself up. But there's the old saying: if I'm only for myself, who am I? If I'm not for myself, who will be? Right? Like if I don't talk for myself, who will? Right? Yeah, exactly. James Vander Zanden, thanks for the $1.99. Senator Feinstein, no one wants to work anymore. She's a quiet quitter. Pete Sweet, thanks for the $5. 30-year UAW GM worker, son of UAW organizer. Short, strong strike is correct. Pick the, I'm sorry, I know you're probably abbreviating for the character limit. Pick the company appointment to set precedent, shut them down completely until you win. Thank you, Pete Sweet. Yeah, we would. I would actually really like to. If you guys are down for that, I'll reach back out to Jacob. Maybe we could do a panel, where we, talk through some of this stuff.
Man, you guys are still allowed. Like people still reach out to you. Like people don't even try. Like if you invite me on, they've been like, God damn it. Like people know my position. People be having to fuck with me, and I'm like, hey, Vanguard, you want to debate me? Them motherfuckers be radio silent. Right.
Well, we went back and forth. He reached out to me and he said, I'd like to come on. And I said, I'd be happy to talk to you, but just out of curiosity, because I wanted to know immediately what did I get factually wrong in my presentation? And then he said, well, you were factually wrong to imply that a strike meant a full strike. And then I'm like, all right. And now you're fucking lawyering me here. So we went back and forth a little more, but I'd still be happy to have him on, so I'll email him back after the show. Maybe we'll get something together.
Yeah, if you want to have me on, I'm down. But if you guys don't have me on, that's fine.
Well, I don't want to have you on if it's going to be 2-on-1. Like if he finds a partner where he can bring on and represent his side, then we'll do it so it's fair. I don't want to
that's what I was saying.
Exactly.
I'm sure there are many people that would like to take that shot. A lot of people usually have a platform. I can't get these motherfuckers to debate me. Like I've asked so many people, like all these people had disagreement. Like you want to come on? Nope, nothing.
Right.
Like all these people that make diss tracks, nothing from these people. They don't want that fun, fam. They don't want that fire.
Well, let's see if we can put it together. Maybe we will. Pat Donahue, thanks for the euro. It's funny the U.S. government with their faux concern for people elsewhere when they have human decay all over their cities and they don't give a you-know-what. Yes, I have a segment on that we're going to do. pretty soon. But thank you, Patrick. Appreciate that. Thank you, folks, for the donations. They are what make these morning streams possible. They are what allow me to skip my day gig to do this. So thank you. We appreciate it very much. Franklin Worsham, thank for the $10. RBN and DD are my favorite podcast by far. Well, thank you. Listen to you guys all the time. Any predictions on if Gruesome Newsom will really replace Vegetable Brandon? Yeah, I talked about this a couple shows back. I think it's about a 50-50 chance now, and I would have not have said that a few months ago. I was always of the opinion that Biden's the incumbent. They're going to ride or die with him. I think the Hunter Biden scandal, the Hunter Biden indictments now give the administration the opportunity to say, hey, just so that there's no legal distractions disrupting the campaign, Biden's going to step aside, and because Kamala is part of the Biden White House, she'll step aside too. I think the Hunter scandal gives them an opportunity to get rid of Biden off the ticket and get rid of Harris off the ticket. And given that Newsom was at the debate last night or 2 nights ago, doing sort of, spin room response, given that he's debating DeSantis in a couple months, I think it's 50-50, if not better than 50-50, that they will push Biden off the ticket and put Newsom on. Nick, do you have an opinion on that, a prediction on that?
I'm sticking with my old prediction. I'm not crumbling to the pressure. I said that Joe Biden's going to be the nominee. That's exactly what he's going to be. I still think, unless Joe Biden literally dies, unless this man gets put in a coma, they're going to shuffle him over the finish line. Mostly because you guys understand, these people are not smart. Now, your analysis is not bad. Most people's analysis is not bad. People are like, well, Democrats don't want to lose, right? You guys think Democrats care about losing? You guys think Joe Biden, with his ego is like, I'm going to step aside because I think I'm going to lose down Trump. Absolutely not going to happen. And I already seen stories from Kamala Harris plants, like media plants. I seen Mika Brzezinski. She did a segment on this. They're like, we should never have Kamala Harris replaced. We can't give the right wing that victory. We can't give the Kamala Harris anti-democratic party talking points that victory. And they won't. They are 100% willing to lose with Kamala Harris because she's Kamala Harris the approved girl boss of the club. And it's all about ego and maintaining their position. They got their position. And the Democrat leadership is 100% okay with losing to Trump in order to keep that leadership in place. Because if Trump wins, they benefit as well. Like I'm of the opinion they don't really care if Trump was or not. So I don't think Biden would ever have the ego to step aside, even if it means Democrats will lose. And I don't even know what mechanism they would use to do that. And even if they did do that, I don't think it would go as well as people think it would go. Like, what people think was going to happen? Like, Biden's going to be removed, Newsom's going to take in, and then a lot of hardcore Biden people are going to be okay with that. That people are not going to see their dysfunction within the Democratic Party. I think that would hurt the party more than anything. You got swapping candidates in an undemocratic way. It
obviously comes with that risk. Yeah. No, I mean, there's obviously a risk.
I could be wrong, but I'm holding my guns on this because I truly believe that they are going with Biden. Also because he's an empty shell, guys. That's another benefit. We all know that Biden is not running his administration.
Yeah, but Newsom is too. Newsom will do what he's told. Newsom's a good boy.
That's a fair point. But having Kamala Harris and a proven brain dead person like Joe Biden is the ideal scenario. So they won't give that up unless Joe Biden is literally at death. So my position before, which I still maintain, is that they're going to keep Joe Biden in the race because he beat Trump before. Win or lose, they keep him in the race. And then after the election is over, he's going to have a health event, whether it's real or not, and they're going to replace him with Kamala Harris. And they can do that because there's no election reckoning, right? They don't want to do that before the election because there'll be election reckoning. Once again, this is my personal thoughts. We see if I'm right or wrong. To me, electoral politics is just fucking bullshit, so who cares? At the end of the day, whether this prediction is right or wrong. But that's why I said from the beginning, I don't think that's going to change.
All righty, cool. Let's we got some more super chats, which we'll get to in a little while here, but let's go on while we still got you, Nick, for another half hour. Let's do this segment here. So we covered the Canadian Parliament's lauding of a Waffen SS Nazi fighter on our Patreon show. We never did a formal segment on that on the main show, but in response to that, several things have happened. One thing is that comedian Rob Schneider has apparently canceled the country of Canada. I just canceled my trip to Canada. I just can't. It's beyond the pale. Trudeau's tyranny against peaceful trucker protesters seemed insignificant to this despicable and outrageous act of honoring one of Adolf Hitler's Nazi soldiers by the Canadian Parliament. No words. Schneider, obviously Jewish himself. And originally when I read this, I thought he canceled his tour in Canada. I thought maybe he had some gigs up there and he canceled that. That would have been more powerful. But, he's doing his part to boycott Canada. And, look, the right wing, whenever they see something that ruffles their feathers, their new go-to is a boycott. And the boycotts can be effective. And I think that we should start shaming people for embracing the Ukraine war. Like, I'm actually for, we need to vote with our mouths and our wallets and our feet if possible. Like, we need to start exposing people for the jokes that they are, who actually are going along with this narrative, which is just getting more and more absurd every day. I mean, it's a dark comedy at this point where you have Parliament standing up applauding the Nazi. You have that Sarah Ashton Cirillo character who we covered on our Patreon show yesterday going out and making threats against Russian propagandists. We're going to hunt you down. I mean, it's so darkly comical at this point. And then you have Trudeau in Canada, whose polling is now in the toilet, like 33% approval rating. I mean, he's just done. Nick, you made a hotspot on this that I'm going to play right now. I'll give your hotspot channel a little plug here. So here's guest of the hour, Nick Cruse, talking a little bit about this related topic.
Justin Trudeau in Canada is still dealing with the fallout of hosting and cheering a Nazi in the Canadian Parliament. Canada was so embarrassed, they are now extraditing the Nazi they just celebrated to Poland. We got him. This was such an embarrassing moment that Canada is now giving up the Nazi that they've been sheltering until he was the tender age of 98. Now Canada and Western officials are forced to give the funniest apology I ever heard in my life. Oops, I accidentally cheered for a Nazi, my bad. Another country apologizing is Germany for having the Germany ambassador to Canada at the event cheering a Nazi. A newly militarized Germany cheering on a Nazi. Not a good look. You have Justin Trudeau handling this as well as you expect he would. Justin Trudeau is blaming Russian disinformation for the fact that his government cheered on a Nazi war criminal. Fucking Russian disinformation tricking us into cheering for Nazis in our government. Not our fault we are collaborating with Nazis in Ukraine. The Russians tricked us. How dumb do they think we are? Those guys the Nazis were never defeated. They was absorbed by the West.
Yeah. Great George Carlin quote was, Germany lost World War II, fascism won it. That's what that last line reminded me of. But just one more thing on Trudeau, the fact that Trudeau's polling is now pretty much where Biden's at is a reflection of the fact that, no, actually the problem with Biden is not just his age, right? Age is a part of it, but it's not just his age. Like, this whole attitude towards domestic policy, neoliberalism, and just international warmongering is just really unpopular throughout the world, even if you have a young pretty boy like Justin Trudeau as its sort of poster child up north.
You had neocons and liberals in February of 2022, in March of 2022, that said the start of the Ukraine war will be the end of Vladimir Putin.
Yeah. Yep. That's what the narrative was. Yep.
Since then, we have been through multiple UK prime ministers. There have been massive protests and riots in France where Emmanuel Macron lost his majority and he's deeply unpopular. Canada, Justin Trudeau is deeply unpopular. You have the United States, Joe Biden is deeply unpopular. Congress is deeply unpopular. So who actually...
And Putin's approval rating is higher than ever in his home country. Yeah, that's a great point.
Putin is more powerful and more loved in Russia than ever before.
Right.
And I'm forgetting something. Heck, I had a whole bit about this. That just... Like, when you look at the entire West, you had the Finland prime minister. She stepped down. She was forced to resign. Western leaders have been in absolute shambles since the start of the Ukraine war. So isn't it funny that they said the Ukraine war is going to be the end of Russia, right?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Now back to the Canadian media story. Now this is hilarious. I've been loving this story. I've covered it multiple times on RBN now. That's why I'm glad you're covering this. You guys know heads are absolutely rolling over this decision as I cover here because Russian media is having a field day with this fam. So the argument that the Russian media have been making that the West, they decided to collaborate with Nazis, and we know this because of Operation Paperclip and their general politics overall. But the message of Russia was the West is buddying up with Nazis. They're Nazi collaborators. They armed Nazis in Ukraine, and Russia having a long time trauma, having millions and millions, tens of millions of people get killed by Nazis in the past, that mobilized their people against Nazis. So despite the West's attempt to deny that they're collaborating with Nazis, despite the fact that Western media reported on this, despite the fact that other media like India, I cut this segment with Indian media covered this, Brazilian media covered Nazi links between Ukraine and the United States and CIA. So they lost the messaging battle already. That showed by 30% of Americans dropped their support in Ukraine. So as the Western government is losing, the Western governments are losing this PR war, and they are denying their involvement with Nazis in Ukraine. Canadian Parliament cheers a Nazi war criminal.
Can't make that
the worst possible thing that could have happened, and people are furious at Canada. And I want you guys to understand, a lot of people in the West are furious at Canada, not because they cheered a Nazi, it's because they gave Vladimir Putin the winning propaganda talking point that he needed. Guys, check out RT or any Russian media. They are going ham over there. They're doing spotlights. I have a source in Russia. I have a friend. There are people, they doing spotlights on that guy's life. They're like, hey, this is the guy they brought on. This is the decision. And every single person that was there, they were being spotlighted. Like one of the people I covered was the German chancellor. The German chancellor of Canada was there. But go ahead, Ken. I know you want to chime in.
No, it's okay. No, I mean, you saw Trudeau. You didn't play the audio in the clip on your hotspot, but he was like, the Russian propagandists are really making hay over this. Yeah, no, that's out of line for that. Like what did you expect?
You guys
it's your mistake, motherfucker. You own it. You own it. I mean, your position is laughable. It would be laughable if it weren't so tragic. I have a dark, morbid sense of humor, so there is dark comedy here in just how fucking absurd the West's position on this is becoming. That's why support for the war is slipping in all of these polls, not just here in the U.S., but Canada, throughout Western Europe. It's so insane. I mean, you couldn't make this shit up. You can't make this shit up. And the idea, we didn't know that he fought with the Nazis. You said in the speech he fought the Russians in World War II. So I don't know. Did you go to fourth grade? Because you learned in fourth grade who the Allied powers were and who the Axis powers were. So if you know he was fighting against Russians in World War II, you knew at the very least he fought on the side of the Nazis. What, that wasn't enough for you to say, maybe this is the wrong guy, right, for this moment? No. So it's just nonsense. I mean, it's just so laughable.
Yeah, they really pretending that they didn't have time to fact check this guy. So they invited a guy to speak at Canadian Parliament at such a huge event. Zelensky was there. So remember, Canada loves Zelensky. They love Ukraine. So this is a big moment, fam. Big moment. You have a guest of honor. Zelensky's going to be there. You don't want to embarrass Canada. So you think they're not going to look up the person they invite to be the guest of honor? You guys really believe that story that they were telling us?
Yeah.
That's the story they're weaving. That they somehow didn't know this guy who fought against the Russians in World War II was a Nazi. Now, I don't know. Hopefully, you don't mind. I actually want to share my screen if you don't mind, Ken, because I want to show you guys something real quick. Another reason why the West is losing the PR war. I actually showed this at Nick at Night. I'll be real quick, not a long segment, but as you mentioned, there's a not only just an anti-imperialist reason to speak out against people on the Ukraine war. The policy has failed. The policy of somehow making a weaker Russia and isolating them on the global stage has failed. Economic war has failed. And I'm repeating this headline over and over again because people are having a hard time believing it. You even have European newspapers and websites that are starting to report this. Russian economy expected to grow despite the Ukraine war.
Oh, you got to share the screen. Hold on. I have to add that. My bad. I didn't realize I had to share it on my end.
Oh, it's all good.
Now it's up. Yeah.
think you guys can hear me anyway, but this is the receipt. I always like to show receipts because, like I said on RB, I don't just.
Yeah, no, it's my bad. I didn't realize I had to share it on my end.
Yeah. I just don't expect people just to believe me. That's why I always like to have the receipt on hand. The country is defying expectations and weathering sanctions, but an eventual slowdown is still expected. That part is cope because they've been saying that since the start of the war. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying they say that every article. Right. Now, let's compare this, because I don't want to be long on this, to what happened in the UK in France. And the UK economy has been doing historically bad this year. Like, the West is in shambles about UK. UK economy hit renewed signs of stress as growth slows. And then you also have this one where, and this is the result of the Nord Stream pipeline bomber and Joe Biden's foreign policy of stripping away Germany's dependence on energy of Russia. Germany went from envy of the world to worst performing major economy. What happened? The loss of cheap gas from Russia played a part.
How'd that happen?
And once again, this is cope because the energy price is soaring and demolishing the German working class. And that is the metric that I use.
Well, that's the Russians' own fault because they blew up their own pipeline. So I don't know what they got to complain about.
Yeah. I just want to do that short. I didn't want to hijack the show. I just want to do that short presentation.
No, thank you. That's
how horrific the overall game plan has been. The economic war has been a complete failure. The counteroffensive has been a complete failure. The idea, and you heard this in the Republican debate, Chris Christie, Mike Pence, and many people are saying this because they realized they lose support. They said, well, the goal of the Ukraine proxy war is to degrade the Russian military, which has absolutely not happened. In fact, they increased military production. Putin gave a speech, and he's talking about how the military is firing at all cylinders. They remilitarized Russia.
Right. Well, now with the alliances that they're forming, obviously that's going to backfire. The only chance that would have to succeed anyway, even despite the strengthening of BRICS, is if this war went on for 10 years and 5 million people died? Like, the lack of consideration for human life is just absolutely psychopathic and sociopathic. And so, that's the other side to this. Folks, we are at 674 viewers in the YouTube chat, so bear with me for one moment, Nick. Tradition on this show, my little headbang when we cross the 666 threshold. Folks, we have some more super chats to get to, and I got to shout out our patrons. I'm going to do that after 11 o'clock because Nick's got to leave at 11, and we have time to do one more segment with Nick before he leaves. So don't worry, I have not forgotten super chats or patron scroll, but I will get to that after this next segment. This is our final segment of the day. So let's talk about some domestic policy a little bit here. Nick, I sent you this article. A seismic shift to the right in San Francisco. The Democratic mayor is proposing the city require all recipients of county-funded welfare to undergo drug screening. San Francisco Mayor London Breed is apparently doubting voters' progressive mood so much that she's banking her re-election on a shift to the right. The Democratic mayor is proposing the city require all recipients of county-funded welfare to undergo drug screening and treatment if needed in order to be eligible for cash assistance. Breed defended her proposal during a news conference at City Hall, where she talked about the need to make subsidies contingent on personal responsibility. Progressive critics were quick to compare her comments to Republican welfare policies. No more anything goes without accountability. No more handouts without accountability, Breed said on Tuesday. It was a striking moment for the mayor of San Francisco, long an ultra-liberal bastion of Democratic politics. It illustrated how homelessness and fentanyl addiction have frustrated residents and upended political norms. Breed has increasingly leaned into tough-on-crime rhetoric in recent months as she faces a growing field of challengers. Critics framed Breed's proposal as an expedient shift as she runs for re-election. She announced that the effort on the same morning that Daniel Lurie, a nonprofit executive and Levi Strauss heir, announced that he will challenge her in next year's election. So this is a pattern that we're seeing now in New York. You're seeing Eric Adams take very hardline stances on immigration, and this just, I think, demonstrates the ultimate and inevitable sort of pivot, if you will, from even progressivism to neoliberalism, because ultimately the fealty is to capitalism. Ultimately, at the end of the day, no matter how progressive you proclaim to be, at the end of the day, your city, San Francisco, is a neoliberal hellhole, vastly unequal. I don't know what the stats are now. I think New York passed them again as the most expensive city to live in the U.S., but for a while, New York City was even more affordable than San Francisco. The rents, the housing in San Francisco, unbelievably expensive. San Francisco, unlike New York, is a very, very small city, so there's a lot less supply on the housing side. But you create these basically like these fantastical playgrounds for rich people, which is what New York is. You know, you walk through the Village in Soho, every storefront is a high-end shop where you can't get a t-shirt for less than $85, and a restaurant where the average dish costs, $42. And then the rich people love that, but they don't want to deal with the consequences of having gentrified these cities to the point where every store is a high-end store, every restaurant is a high-end restaurant, and they get to live this unbelievably luxurious lifestyle. They want to shield themselves from the consequences of that, which is displacement of poor people, which of course leads to pathologies like drug addiction and crime and things like that. And so ultimately, the response is always going to be, no matter how progressive these people seem, the response must always be, if they want their cities to remain these playgrounds for rich people that they are, they're going to have to blame the poor and have to crack down on the poor. I don't think this drug testing rule is going to help. It never really does. It's just going to mean people who are addicted to drugs will keep using drugs because they're addicted, because they're in pain and they're suffering, and that's what they do to numb the pain. They're just going to not get welfare benefits anymore. They're just going to get poorer. Right, and the problem is only going to get worse.
Save money? How is that saving money? How much is it going to cost to drug test all these people?
No, of course it's ridiculous.
People think this is saving money.
Yeah,
you think this is about saving money?
No, it's a way of shifting blame. It's a way of saying it's not our fault that we gentrified these cities to the point where working class or even middle class people can't afford to live here anymore. It's not our fault we did that. That's what the market demanded of us. And so now the market demands that we crack down more on poor people to disguise our own faults for letting this situation get so out of control. This is what I say about capitalism all the time. It has no self-correcting mechanism, right? There's no self-moderating mechanism within capitalism, the way there is within socialism, because socialism is ownership by the workers. So the workers naturally provide a sort of democratic check on any growth to keep it from getting out of control to the point where millions slip through the cracks. There's no such mechanism at work under capitalism, which is why the only thing they can do is say, well, it's poor people's fault for not having their act together. It's not our fault for embracing market incentives and turning this city into a paradise for rich people and a hellhole for everybody else. And that's what has happened in San Francisco. The same thing has happened in New York. And the reflex is always going to be to serve the market, because that's what capitalism demands.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's why the social democrats who believe the Democrats are the lesser of two evils, they are deeply unserious, and their analysis is not rooted in class war at all. Because not only just San Francisco, in my city, in Kansas City is a blue city in the red ocean of Missouri, is governed by Quentin Lucas. Quentin Lucas was even supported by Casey Tennant. He was a progressive candidate because he promised to take on capitalist interests in Kansas City. And as soon as he got elected, he immediately folded to the real estate development companies and the KCPD, increasing the police department budgets, siding with real estate developers and gentrifying the area. And this is why Casey Tennant turned against Quentin Lucas and trying their best to run campaigns against them, because he betrayed them, because he's a Democrat that do the bidding of the Democrat class leaders. So when people say Democrats are the lesser of two evils, what are you talking about? What are you applying? Because when you look at local politics, when you look at it, the New York City that's run by Democrats, Eric Adams, they waging a war on homeless. San Francisco waging a war on homeless and working class people. Kansas City, there's what the KC-10s call black genocide, because Kansas City, a lot of people don't know, has 3 times more than the national average of black people than the United States. It's around 30. I remember I looked this up when I was in high school. It was around 34%. Kind of like, nigga, we're only 30% of the population. That don't make sense. Like, because I see black people everywhere. But Kansas City, at least when I looked this up in high school, was 33% black. 33% black, way higher than national average. That's why Kansas City is a blue city in a red ocean. Right? Now, because Quentin Lucas and Democrats teamed with real estate developers to gentrify our community and make it unlivable, there have been what activists call black genocide, where black numbers are drastically decreasing in Kansas City. A blue city in a red ocean, Keaton.
Yep.
So you guys now you guys understand why I push back so hard when Bernie Sanders, AOC, Crystal and Cal and these sellouts sell the idea that Democrats are the lesser of two evils, because they are rich and they do not suffer the consequences of Democratic Party politics and Democratic Party legislation. What do we all know? What do these professional managerial class people say all the time that they don't actually believe? Politics is actually mostly local, right?
Right.
In terms of the impact on your life. Why do you guys think I cover foreign policy so much? Because in terms of the national stage, not many things matter more than foreign policy. That's one of the few things that matter on the national stage. But if you want to actually talk about what stuff that actually that changed your life, you need to start focusing on local politics, or you're not serious. That's why I can tell you everything about my mayor Quentin Lucas and my congressperson Emmanuel Cleaver, but most people cannot, right? Because I understand that that politics is local. And who fucking up our community? Democrats, black congressional caucus people in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And and people got confused about why RBN and why I had the politics that I do, because I actually understand how politics works. Unlike deeply unserious DSA Jacobin clowns who still pretend that these Democrats who sell out working class people in their city is somehow the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, no, indeed.
This is why they don't debate me, by the way.
This is from Rumble. This is Rebel Seer, who's a member over on Rumble. Thank you for the comment. I live in San Francisco. Letting people OD on the streets and calling it compassionate is crazy. That's not what I'm advocating. I'm advocating for housing. That's what I'm advocating for. And this is what I mean when I say that there is no self-correcting mechanism within capitalism or self-regulating mechanism within this sort of market-based system, because you have landlords that are literally making life worse for themselves and their rich tenants and their rich renters. Like, this creates a quality of life crisis for the rich people who enjoy the cities. This is what I mean. They don't want to live. They don't want to see the consequences of making housing so unaffordable. The landlords, because capitalism insists that we maximize our earnings at all times, at any and all costs to the social fabric, you have landlords driving up prices in San Francisco and New York. New York now, we have a record amount of vacant apartments in New York City. So you have homelessness rising, but you have also an increase in vacant apartments because the landlords are just so incredibly greedy. And it's not just that every landlord happens to be an asshole. It's that capitalism makes assholes of landlords, of property owners, because of the incentives inside it, right? So if you have homelessness spiking and apartments vacant, what that means is that you have the capitalists, the landowners, the people who own the buildings, own the apartments that could be used to house people, they are driving up prices to the detriment of their own tenants and their own selves, because you're making quality of life in the city worse for everybody. But my point is that capitalism does not account for that. Right? It doesn't account for a human element like that. So I'm not saying let people stay on the streets and OD and die. Of course not. Of course not. The solution is housing. That's a very, very feasible, very sensible, and very rational one, but it's one that the capitalist system does not permit. And that's what we're seeing now, because there is no self-regulating operation within it. There's no incentive for these landlords to say, hey, maybe for the good of the community, including the good of my rich tenants who are paying me $4,500 a month to live in a fucking box, maybe for their good, we should, lower the prices of housing or partner with governments to, because there's all kinds of things that these buildings work out. Like most new developments in Manhattan set aside some rent stabilized units because they get major tax breaks. Something like that. There's stuff that can be done. So no, obviously the solution is not let people OD on the streets.
Yeah. One thing I will correct, because I see a comment from Pigboard Dude 87 where he said genocide is a bit extreme. I would say I did misspoke. They say ethnic cleansing of black people. So genocide is extreme, because I did say that the black genocide can't say that is a bit extreme. I think the more accurate term is to say ethnic cleansing That is what I meant to say. And I'm gonna share this because I think this is in line with the segment. If you allow me to share my screen one last time.
Yep.
This is a spoiler of a segment I was planning on doing RBN. Unfortunately, I didn't have time this week. There was a lot going on. So I reported on due dissidence because this is showing how both parties work together on the class interest. Right, Keaton?
Right.
And this is from the New York Times. That's why I got screenshots because they gave me one of them few free trial articles. So whenever I do that, I post a ton of screenshots. In Rare Alliance, Democrats and Republicans seek legal power to clear homeless camps. And by the way, the whole Rare Alliance thing, not true. Bipartisanship happens all the time. It's not rare. That's what happens when government comes together to screw you. They do it to get war done. They do it to get corporate bailouts done. They do it to approve disaster capitalism. But let me read the subheadline. Dozens of leaders, mostly from Western states, they're talking about California, Oregon and such, have asked the Supreme Court to overturn lower court decisions that restrict enforcement against public camping. Now, let me sum that up for you guys. Eric Adams and these pro-cop mayors and police departments, they do violent, illegal raids of these camps. And now Democrats are teaming with Republicans in order to overturn a court order that essentially said, hey, what you guys are doing is psychopathic. Now, Democrats want to increase the police state and militarize it against the poor and working class people. But tell me more, Crystal and Cal, social democrats, Bernie Sanders left, on how the Democrat Party is the lesser of two evils.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's insane. We might do this on we might cover this on Sunday with Russell, but in New York, the mayor is very proud of this new program where people who are homeless or who can't afford to live in the city, they can now join this program where the state will find them housing in a more affordable city in New York State. So they're going to force them out of New York City. New York City is a place where a lot of people spend their whole lives. Like, there are a lot of people who are born in New York, they live in New York their entire lives. So that's actually being bandied about as a legitimate solution to the housing crisis in New York City, which, once again, there is no real housing crisis. There's more vacant apartments in New York than there ever were. It's not that they don't have housing. It's that landlords don't want to rent the apartments out for rates that people can afford to pay. So you have Mayor Eric Adams saying, well, actually, if you can't afford to live here anymore, we'll help set you up in what, fucking Rochester? So if you were living in New York City your whole life and it's now been gentrified to the point where you can't get a roof over your head there, the city is now coming to your rescue and they're going to ship you 300 miles upstate? Like that's the solution? It's absurd. It's absurd. Yeah, but anyway, it is coming up on 11 o'clock. So, Nick, I know you got some hotspot videos you got to record, right?
Yeah, I think I'm making the one on the Cenk Uygur story because that video, that story is too funny. And I tend to have fun making these. And I covered a lot of serious stories. Covered a lot of serious stories recently, so I think the Cenk Uygur one will be funny. The video taking some time to edit. I enjoy the format. I've been enjoying that a lot. To be honest, I've been enjoying doing these videos more than YouTube recently. It's very fun. I know you guys get tired of listening to me rant for 2 hours, so it's a different format to reach people who like me, honestly. I don't watch a ton of independent media. Like, I covered, like, CJ will bring up segments. I don't got attention span like that, generally. So there are people who like shorter videos. So I wanted to expand our message for people who want to engage in that kind of content instead of a long fucking live stream. You know, diversify your content. So I hope you guys have been enjoying the hotspots. If you follow me on Twitter, my Instagram, and other places I'll post some of them on RBN. But it takes some time to edit. I want to make sure I get this done in time. So it's great to join you. It's always great to join you guys on the other side of the post-duopoly left network that we kind of established with our friend Heartlands and CJ. So always great to be on the channel. You guys are absolutely killing the game. Always fantastic work. Watch your guys' stuff. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much, Nick. And, I could hear you rant forever. So I like both your YouTube content and your hotspot content, but I'll let you get on about your day. Great to see you, my friend. Always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining. All right, everybody. We got some business to take care of here. I want to thank Nick Cruse once again for joining. I see Rebel now in the chat saying that you weren't saying I was advocating for that. San Francisco housed people in hotels during COVID, and that's what they're doing now. We have 563 ODs so far in 2023. Okay, well, thank you for saying that, because there is this weird thing I didn't know if you thought I was doing what a lot of like liberals do, because there's this whole like section of like the postmodern, like sort of like progressive left that thinks like, no, leave the homeless to live their lives the way they do. That's why they call them unhoused, as if being unhoused is a lifestyle choice, like being a vegan or something, right? Oh, no, leave them alone. No, you don't. No, if someone is on the street desperately suffering, the right policy is not to simply leave them there to suffer. The right policy is to provide housing. But there is a contingent on the left who is like, no, actually homelessness is this weird kind of virtue, and we shouldn't be sweeping them off the streets and putting them in shelters and things like that. So I just didn't want you to confuse what I was saying with that, because those types are certainly out there. All right, so let's go to dodissidents.com/supporters. By the way, folks, our Patreon members and our paid Substack subscribers, hold on. There we go. All right, I got it. I must have hit a typo the first time. Our friend and producer Jake put together this lovely patron scroll for us. The only thing that I have not learned how to do yet is update it myself. So on the shows that he's not on, I haven't updated the most recent Patreon subscribers. So I do apologize for that. I'll get you guys on the scroll for Sunday's show, because part of this new technology involves me actually learning how to work it. But I will give you guys a verbal shout out, because we actually did have quite a few people sign up since last time. So for the Patreon feed, we had Elizabeth M., Timsy, Cindy U., The Illustrative Carp, and James M. join. And then we had a couple Substackers too, which I can't access now, but we will get you guys all on this scroll properly with your name up in lights as you deserve by Sunday. But you can go to patreon.com/DoDissidents and help support this show. It really does help a lot. We just did 2 patron shows this week. I thought they were both a lot of fun. Mondays was a lot of fun. And then I thought yesterday's was a real banger too. Yesterday's was really the quintessential Do Dissidents episode. It had everything. So that was a real fun one. I enjoyed yesterday's quite a bit. But both of those this month were, I thought, really, really good ones. I thought they came out great. And so we do our patron exclusive live streams over on Rumble, so they're uncensored. We can explore certain topics that we're not allowed to explore here as fully as we'd like to in East Berlin, as we like to call it. So if you join at patreon.com/DoDissidents or DoDissidents.substack.com, you get access to those supporter exclusive streams, as well as call-in access to all of our regularly scheduled live streams, and you get your name up in lights on our sort of credit scroll here. Let's take some super chats before we head out. Some questions from the audience. Thank you guys all very much for being here this morning. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed. If you're over on Rumble, hit that follow button. Very important that you do that to stay in touch with us. Franklin Warsham, thanks for the $5. You don't need the support of the people if you had a truckload of mail-in ballots in the middle of the night. They know they will win no matter what. Conspiracy theory. Well, actually, we're allowed to read that now, thanks to the new YouTube rules. In the old days, I wouldn't be allowed to read that one. I'd have to give you your money back. I'd have to mail a $5 bill to wherever you are. Vicky Blair, thanks for the $5. Crystal, have you thought about staff? Bat's eyelash. So I didn't want to raise this as part of the segment because I didn't want to get too personal. But Cenk Uygur and Kyle Kalinske are apparently really on the outs. Remember when Cenk Uygur trashed Kyle in that tweet that he put out? I forget if it was after Forced to Vote. Cenk didn't think Kyle stood up for him against Jimmy, and so Cenk really trashed Kyle pretty hard in a tweet, and so it's kind of interesting to see Crystal yucking it up with him on breaking points. Maybe they buried the hatchet, but that did occur to me. I don't like to cover stuff from that personal sort of gossip angle, but it definitely did occur to me. Eric Husso, thank you very much. Will Cenk drop out if Jimmy runs? Dore 24. It's getting very interesting. I wonder what other YouTubers are going to jump in the race. Like I said, if it stops Cenk from doing it, I might be willing to do it. I don't know. We'll see. But I'd have to run as a Democrat. Otherwise, it wouldn't stop him. So that's a little bit of a deal breaker, unfortunately. James Vanderzanden, thanks for the $1.99. Will Cenk debate Bulla 2024? Yes, he should debate Bulla. We should actually get that going, a candidates debate. The Democratic primary sort of B bracket debate. We could do that. That would be a fun one. Thank you, James Mr. Methuselah, thank you for the $10. Appreciate that, my friend. Continual money grifter. Junk's yogurts can never be POTUS. He was born in Istanbul, Turkey. Was he born in Istanbul? Is that true? Is that true? That's interesting. Because if that is the case, that means that, that this is definitely for show. Let's see. An American political commentator. Yes, you're right. Look at that. Look at Mr. Methuselah with the research there. I'll put this up on the screen. This is from Wikipedia. He's born in Istanbul. So what the fuck's he talking about? Okay, so then he can't run. I wish I knew that for this segment. That's interesting. Interesting. Great point. Thank you for pointing that out. How'd we all miss that? Eric Cruse didn't miss it either. Cenk was born in Istanbul, so cannot run. Oh, wow. Interesting. I should have put that in the segment. Even if Cenk's pipe dream, says RBGH fam, thanks for the $5, was successful, thinking a Cali guy named Gavin carries the Rust Belt is laughable. Well, I don't know if you saw our last episode where we talked about the bills that Gavin Newsom vetoed, because those vetoes were definitely meant to sort of buck the progressive wing of the party in California and appeal to, what he views as a more moderate, perhaps more sort of populist national voter base. But vetoing the bill that said that self-driving trucks had to be manned with a driver at all times, that would absolutely destroy him in the Rust Belt. Because just so everybody knows what I'm talking about, there was a bill that said that a self-driving truck has to have a person in it, which seems like the prudent thing to do, to be honest. It seems like for safety's sake, they should have a person in them. But obviously, that's a huge, huge jobs concern. And the number one predictor of an Obama to Trump swing voter in 2016 was the automation of jobs. In other words, counties that lost the most jobs to automation were the counties where it was most likely to have a very high percentage of voters switch from two-time Obama supporters to Trump supporters. And so I think it's almost impossible to win in the Rust Belt having vetoed a bill that would basically protect truck drivers' jobs against automation. That just seems like a really, really difficult thing to overcome. So I don't know quite what he was thinking there. But yeah, he'd have a tough time in the Rust Belt. But look, so is Biden, so is Harris. Like, I still think Newsom is the most electable of those three. That's hardly an endorsement of Newsom. That's just a sad commentary on the state of the Democratic Party and their prospects heading into next year. Eric Cousseau, thanks again. Eric Cousseau is making it rain today. Thank you, my friends. Very, very generous of you. They will offer Newsom nomination in exchange for Shifty Schiff gets Senate seat. Who gets VP? Interesting. Who would be Newsom's VP? I mean, I think Whitmer would be probably the wisest electoral choice. But I don't know if they'd want to lose that governor's seat either. That's always a concern that they have, is if they take a swing state governor out of office, that they could lose that seat to a Republican. But I do think Whitmer probably makes the most sense. Interesting dealing there. They'll offer Newsom the nomination in exchange for Shifty Schiff, because now that Feinstein has passed away, they're going to have to fill that seat. And Newsom, I don't think, is going to appoint Adam Schiff, because he promised to appoint a black woman to replace Feinstein were she not able to finish the term. But that's an interesting proposition there, and an interesting question. Thank you very much for it. K Nuts, thanks for the $10. I'm conservative, but I enjoy your news feed more than any other source. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for chopping up your podcast into smaller, digestible segments. Yep, we put out clips all the time. Thank you, K Nuts. I like your screen name, and appreciate the compliment, my friend. And thank you for the support. Thank you for the donation. Dominic Morrow, thanks for the $5. Weiss Feinstein 2024. Yeah, good call. I'll table that one. Black Freud, thanks for the $5. Nazism, I gotcha, was invented in the West, so the chickens have come home to roost. Thank you, Black Freud. Left Less, thanks for the $2. Appreciate that. Congressional means test compensation and term limits. Thank you, Left Less, for the donation. Vicky Blair, thank you for the $10. This happened in Vermont in the 80s when a local rich restaurant owner started a Westward Ho project where he would buy bus tickets to California for homeless Vermonters. Yeah, they really disguise that as like a compassionate solution. And like I said, in New York City, you know, people live their whole lives in New York City. You know, New York City is a big place. I mean, it's its own state. It's its own little country in the middle of America. It's such a unique place that people live their whole lives in. And to have to be displaced later in life because the fucking, you know, assholes have gentrified the city to the point where you can't even get a goddamn roof over your head. And then the mayor steps in and says, hey, good news. We're going to help you relocate to where? Like where I live. I mean, I love where I live, but if you're a lifelong resident of the city, that's a very, very difficult adjustment to make. A lot of people who are lifelong New Yorkers never learn to drive because they never have to, right? So, we're going to ship you up to Syracuse, Utica, right? I mean, that's not helping them. That's not helping. And there's no excuse not to get houses over people's heads in New York City. Like I said, plenty of available housing. So that wraps our show for the morning. Thank you guys all very, very much for being here. We appreciate you all. We appreciate our friend Nick Cruse coming by to help us out. We hope you guys enjoyed this show. Please like this stream. Please subscribe to this channel, be it on YouTube or on Rumble. Very important. Share this stream with your friends if you like it. Help us get the word out. All right. And if you can, support us at patreon.com/DoDissidents or DoDissidents.substack.com. We will be back on the air Sunday night at 7 p.m. I will be on Misty Winston's radio show tonight at 6:15 p.m. Eastern. That's TNT Radio /live. It's a live online radio show. They simulcast to YouTube as well, and then it'll be out in podcast form within the next couple of days. I usually post a clip or so from it to the YouTube channel so you can hear it. But please tune in live. Misty's a great friend of ours. She was on our show. I was supposed to be on her show on the 11th of September, but my son was sick, and so I had to bail on her at the last minute, which I hated to do, but they were very kind to reschedule me for tonight. So I'll be over on TNT Radio this evening, 6:15 p.m. Once again, TNT Radio /live. And so I will see you guys there again. Well, I won't see you, but you'll hear me. That's audio only. But please catch me there if you can. That'll be fun. It's always great to talk to Misty, and I love going on her radio show. Bonzo Bean says, can't afford Patreon and Super Chats, Rumble Rants. Can patrons Super Chat for free? No, but send me an email. And we'll see if we can work something out for you since you give us enough Rumble Rants. We'll see if we can hook you up. All right. I mean, we don't want cost to be a barrier if it's really, stretching you thin. So we'll see if we can work something out for you, my friend. You got our email. Hit us up, and we'll see if we can work something out. All right. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate you all being here. Thank you to Nick Cruse for joining us. We'll be back Sunday night, 7 p.m. right here on this channel. TNT Radio live tonight. I'll be on at 6:15. The show starts at 6, so listen from the beginning. 6 o'clock Eastern, TNT Radio /live. I'll be live with our friend Misty Winston. We'll see you all on Sunday. Until then, have a great weekend. Be safe. Be well. Thank you very much for joining. As always, bye-bye.
Please clap.